Let's call to order the Water Sewer Commissioners meeting, Tuesday, July 11th. I all rise to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Let's see. Let's start with any meeting minutes to approve.
I don't think we had time today, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go right down the line here. New business, the pump station updates. Norwood and Holly Road. Get Steve out of the way. Is that what we're doing?
Whatever you want to do. I had information there that I was going to fire through and we'll put the reference section on later.
All right, we'll just go through superintendent's updates. And just go from there. Okay, thanks.
You want to do that? You want to start off with those sections? Up to you. Not sure how it's listed on there. I don't think I'm finding.
Yeah.
Go over
We got an agenda. We got an agenda.
I don't want that.
One.
Another tree that we cut down. So, Norwood and Holly Road, as you know, we've been waiting on those generators for some time. The majority of the site work has been done, ready for the generators to come in hopefully this fall. It's the last that we heard from the suppliers. What we've been going around with Eversource about is the new gas services to each location. After some additional calls and correspondence back and forth, we finally hooked up with the gentleman who sets up the new commercial account and determines applicability. So we understood that we were going to be on the hook for paying for the services to be installed, obviously road work, whatever else is involved. In my mind, I was kind of spinning some numbers around with what we charge for work that we do. It's really similar, just installing, connecting to different utilities. I couldn't be further off if I know. Be that as it may, we are responsible to pay directly Eversource for their installation of new services. So there is in the billing a copy of the check that James had signed last week. So we had to expedite this.
Yeah,
We got it on last. It was on the So just the way it worked out, because we've been speaking about this for so long, they were able to date the bills in the previous fiscal year. So in order to have that happen, we had to have it early last week. James was able to come in and sign. I know he contacted you as well to get those two off. So it's kind of a post update to what has happened. The cost for the upgrade for the service at the Norwood station, which is going from a half-inch line up to an inch and a quarter line, is $12,493. The cost for the brand new service to be installed at the Holly Road station is $8,422.
This entitles just running the line and connecting.
This is installing the line, the gas meter, the regulator, the road repair, the details. Basically everything will cost to put in a service.
How far along is this?
They are not very far. Holly Road is across the road, if I remember correctly. Norwood has a service that's existing, which means they have to go disconnect that tap it off,
Oh, it's happened
move
new.
over, weld on the new tap, and run the line over. So there is definitely a little bit more work involved there. But again, far more costly than I would have even thought to estimate each of these at.
Maybe we should break that rate.
No, that's a whole other topic that I'll get to on page 5 of my estimate of my paperwork here. So that's where we're at. We're on the hook for that. We expedited those checks. I believe they may actually go out this week. And as soon as the checks are cut, the gentleman's actually going to come here and pick them up. And then he's going to start the process of getting us in the queue for the work. So he couldn't even get us in the queue until they have the applications and the check in there. They wanted their money up front, even though they knew we were good for it. That's just their overall regulation. So again, it worked out. If anything was a benefit that it came out of the previous fiscal year's budget, we had obviously a little bit of money left over. We were able to pull this from a few of the remaining line items and not go over the total budget. So it was definitely a benefit because this is not something that was anticipated for a special line item that we had actually had in the FY24 budget.
It's crazy.
Money's in there for, obviously, for paying for gas service and electrical and utilities and things like that, but as far as installations of brand new, I can't recall the last time anything like this was done other than the newest one on West Main Street that was part of a project. So as far as an in-house upgrade, it's usually not something that we want to try. Definitely get some money. Jump to old business. Back to that. I guess we start off with one of the oldest abatement requests that came in, which was 313 West Main Street. The gentleman's name is Louis. I don't know if he was on. It doesn't appear he was joining us as Zoom. We had sent a letter to Mr. Louis. After
we have that in the packet.
we had a previous meeting.
Third page.
So that's the copy of the letter that we sent to him explaining the determination of the board after we met with the tax collector here via Zoom. The board had chosen to initially look at opportunities to possibly change some of the way the monies are collected, either by doing payment plans or changing passive interest amounts, and obviously that was all discussed in-house externally with the treasurer, and the determination was it was not in the best interest at the time, and this is basically what the letter reflects. We've spoken to Mr. Outside, explained that to him. He still would like the board to reconsider and see if there's anything that the board is willing to do for him while he attempts to pay this bill down. His concern was that he has already paid a substantial amount to the department, but as the interest continues to accrue, it's almost like it's only taking off a small chunk, which unfortunately is exactly what's happening. For some reason, it cannot be paid by, and Brooke, correct me if I'm wrong with this, it's December, that it would go to follow through with the lien process as per the town requirement. So he does still have some time to pay it down. It is a rather large bill, unfortunately. I honestly don't know the board's feelings on this, and you guys obviously are aware of the whole situation going on in the letter as well. There's very limited options there. There is no sewer with that address. The water that we know purposely leaked on the ground did not enter the sewer, so we can't even abate that because it's not an option there. Right. And just reiterating what you all said at a previous meeting, that you're very limited what you can do with this. Any type of agreement. So.
There's no question as to what accuracy of the meter or anything like that. It is what it is, right? I personally have always been of the thinking that it goes through the meter, it has to be paid for. One way or another, and we already visited the payment plan and kind of punted on that. So
he called you, didn't send an email or text the bill.
Correct. This gentleman has called the office numerous times, spoken with Janice, Brooke, John, and myself on different occasions. The last conversation we had with him, it did not appear that he had this letter. After speaking and asking a few more questions, he did reference the letter. He just didn't completely understand the language in there, even though, again, it's been explained to him a few different times.
Even if we were to opt in payment plan, which we're not going to do, but like you said, this isn't going to go into. When will this go to collection then? It will be next year?
The end of this year, in December.
End of December. So, what I'm getting at is he has time to basically do his own thing.
Yeah.
You know, you could understand that, and if we were to say, okay, enter into this payment plan or do it on your own, it's the same thing, essentially, for those further stuff.
He wants us to reduce the bill, basically.
He wants to reduce the bill.
But we really have no power to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have power to do it, but we're not gonna set the example to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
I make a motion that we take no action.
I would second that.
Oh, okay.
Aye.
Thank you. And move on to another, bill discussion. This would be for 210 Plain Street. You all have a packet on that as well. So we have, at the last meeting, decided, that we were going to gather weekly meter readings from this address and look at the usage as a potential to use for the calculated estimate of what, we would assume would be an average use for a quarter. Based on the readings that we have obtained here, we have, June 21st, we got a reading of 5, the 28th, we got a reading of 6, July 6th was 9, and, July 11th was 9. So we got 9 units, over the course of 4 weeks. Obviously, 0.3 would be for the quarter, brings them up to the 27 units, where if you look at some of the previous reading, I believe that Brooke has in some of the packets there, it shows that way back when, prior to the meter failing, he was tracking right in that range. So it appears that, the estimates that were generated at the time, after the zero consumption was noticed in the system, although at 50 units was high for the time, it balanced out with the amount of 0 units minimum bills that were at. And I know we kind of touched on that at the last meeting. It was difficult to understand if you look at the averages. It falls in line.
Yeah.
So the opportunity here, based on when he wrote us or the board a letter disputing his bill, would only cover the third quarter bill. The first and second quarter were outside of the window for a dispute. The fourth quarter, we actually put in an accurate reading because the meter had been installed. Even though it was a very small reading, it was accurate and we put it in place. So it generated a minimum bill for the fourth quarter. There is a packet here that has been broken down if the board chooses to use the 27 as an estimate, reducing the estimate that was in place for that third quarter at 55. It would just about reduce that third quarter bill, and only the third quarter bill, by half. So there is some language here that is written. I'm not sure if you have that or not.
I mean, I look at all the numbers. I mean, that 27, it seems to be
It falls right there.
right in line.
So again, if it's something that you are comfortable with, we do have some numbers here that Brooke has come through with this email. And
Good job, Brooke.
Yeah, just good work.
so we pass these down and obviously bring in Steve as well. That definitely makes you can see it at its face value. It's pretty very high. I don't think that as well. It's part of the,
I make a motion to abate for 210 Plain Street, to abate the third quarter water bill for 210 Plain Street, the amount of $255.30. I think July 11th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep, absolutely. Good job. Seriously. A lot of work.
There's no issues with that either.
no, that is a
Brand new, right?
meter that was installed. Correct.
Hopefully we can start fresh and
No, that's okay. I just wanted to tell you, for me to clear it out. Yeah, not really using that. Next quarter.
that's the last one we have. Or we have
Yes, no, we have one more. This is,
Okay, yep.
This would be a Reservoir Street address.
Okay.
Are you in the 100 cubic feet?
They are. Put it on a Reservoir Street. Mr. Smith, came to the office with, speaking with the women, was questioning why he had received, an estimated water bill. And obviously, he also had a red card that was on his door, which prompted, some concern. So, looking back, immediately we didn't really know the history behind it, but, it appears that that address had actually been estimated for exactly 1 year. So the meter was working up to a point, stopped reading, estimated readings were generated, cards were left each time, so 4 cards were left. That's a breakdown of the numbers there in one of these accounts. So where it says MES, that's an estimated read as compared to an actual.
Right.
So again, this year, we look at previous usage. The computer will give us the average consumption for the previous quarter earlier in that year.
That 18 is an average of going how far back?
If you look at the top of the page where it says MES in the middle of the type, right in the middle of the page it says type, and then below that it's MES. MES is the estimated read.
Right, what I'm saying is that's an average going back a certain.
Yep. Usually you go back within the window. It's usually 2 years.
Okay.
It really depends on, obviously, if there were zeros or single numbers, that didn't really make much sense. So that's where that comes from. And, so the meter was actually changed today. So there's an appointment we had to get the meter changed out today. So we don't have the option, unless we wait, to do the same thing that the board has done with, Plain Street, as far as generating 1 month's worth of actual readings and looking at. But we're not in the same parameters here.
This is one on a bill, even if we did that, you're talking about that. It's not.
It would be
Very
pretty
small money
small.
to change, so.
The concern that they had was that they were not in the home for the majority of the billing portion. They were away. So there's no request to have the water cut off for the facility, so we don't know if somebody else is utilizing the property, somebody else lives in the home. But we're gonna estimate it, accordingly.
Is this the note that they get when they get an estimated reading?
That is the note that's left. If they took it without, that's the one that.
Okay. Okay, like each of these 4 estimates,
He would have better.
they would be a company, they would know about.
A red card.
That's the one that was on the handle?
Yeah, on the handle. Pretty basic notice. Those are the ones that most people say that they don't notice, whether they blow away or, the rain destroys them, whatever. After we've gone through and we started doing the manual reviews of the accounts, which does it all at the time, we find accounts like this that either have had, multiple estimated reads, or unfortunately, if we run into a situation like we've had before, where the meter is still generating a read, but we're getting a zero consumption, now we're leaving these cards and actually taping them to the people's doors.
So, have they asked for,
They did ask for a reduction in,
well, have they tested the meter, or have
No,
we
no,
done
this
a
is the
leak
brand new
detection
thing.
survey at all inside the house?
You said we changed the meter today, did we get a visual reading?
I do not know that. I'm not even sure we changed that meter yet.
That's why I don't have on the board.
It could be on the board. They might have it.
I mean, I just, make sure that obviously the meter's working correctly, and I'm sure it is. I've never seen a meter fail.
No,
It's tested, but
Typically, if the meter fails and it locks the digits in, we get that same reading over and over again. But with this case here, where we weren't getting a reading, it usually shows a separation from the head unit to the rear box, so you're not getting information from the meter. So, but this was kind of a last minute thing we put on the meeting agenda. Is there any information?
The reading was 1318.
Okay.
so that's in
Close to the
13.42 right now.
Basically, the 4th quarter off, a little, pretty close to 24 units, right, more. We estimated 24 units more than they used. And their bill was 20 units for the third quarter or second quarter.
I don't see what we can do here. It's 4 quarters in a row of being notified about the meter. It's not a tremendously huge bill. You know, we did the whole, you know, looking in and prorating, or we'll be doing a big $30. It's not going to change that much, so I move we take no action on either regular street.
So we've overestimated them? Is that what we've done? Is that what I'm understanding this correctly?
Yes. So basically, the reading on the meter right now is 1318.
Mhm.
We estimated it in June as 1342.
Okay.
So they're 4 units short of what we had estimated them at in March, basically. So they're 24. They're 24 units over on our estimate than what they've actually used
For the course of the year,
No, for the
or just the last.
So
for the last quarter.
And what would that equate to?
Well, that's I mean
24 units. Is that
It's 20,
Yeah, it's 24
24
units.
over or 4 over?
no, it's 24.
24.
24 over.
So basically, a little bit more than what their last bill is, consumption-wise, is what we overestimated. Which we did estimate on what their average use is, but they said that they, I think they were in Florida for 6 months or something. So I mean, I don't think this is exactly like those other cases. I mean, we do have a visual reading on the meter, so I mean,
So,
though it's not like the other ones where the water went through the meter
Right.
and
and I think, I personally think that, maybe we should consider abating the overestimation and use the actual.
That 1318, what date was that?
Today.
today.
That
was
that
today.
meter was changed today.
I mean, you could theoretically abate that whole
The whole bill.
fourth quarter bill. It's second quarter of the calendar year, fourth
Yeah.
quarter of the fiscal year.
I'd be more comfortable with that than not doing anything at all. No disrespect. I just,
Oh, it's okay. So the 1318 tells us the meter's been spinning and
It's still been registered, just hasn't been sending us.
Right.
and now there's a new meter in there, so it's not an issue. Correct. So when the meter isn't sending the signal, you change the whole, that part of it that sends it is part of the whole meter.
The new meters,
You don't change
the
it.
new meters, it's all the same
Okay.
thing. It used to be a meter and then there's a radio box. on the
Okay,
side.
that's what I thought it was. I thought it was a separate thing.
Now we just swap the whole meter and the radio box is on the meter.
All right, well, if we have a bona fide reading, then I guess it's pretty black and white, and I would retract my motion.
What's the second?
I think it was.
Chairman didn't call for a vote. Doesn't matter. So we want to make a motion to, we want to abate a certain amount or a number of units.
well, the units, because we don't know the amount really.
Well, you can't, I don't think you can abate amount of units because the bill from the third quarter has already been paid.
Okay.
So I think basically your option is to abate the fourth quarter bill.
Okay.
Is the closest thing to calling it even, as far as I'm concerned.
That's when we get back to the previous.
Yeah.
And then it's a wash, pretty much.
Yeah, so I mean, and it actually
Close
is,
enough.
it is gonna kind of make up for it because, I don't know how the billing works as far as, Brooke, how do we account for what they've used this quarter with this new meter going in? So like we're changing out a meter that was estimated, we're putting a new meter in. How do we decide what they've used? Like when we read in September. Okay, so basically they got a month and a half of free water, basically.
And no one's there anyway, so.
Well, I don't know how long they were there, but it's a negligible. It probably makes up for the 4 units they weren't going to get back by abating that bill. There may be a little more, but pretty negligible, I would say.
You guys okay with
All right.
that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. So this should be fourth quarter of fiscal year 23. Is that correct? All right, I move to abate the fourth quarter of fiscal year 23 bill for 180 Reservoir Street. Memorial.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good job.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, good. Do we give out gold stars here? Because I think,
There's a lot of work went into it. Absolutely.
I see all this. And it's just like, yeah.
We never have enough information. I think.
7 years later, you're recyclable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
7 years, really.
I'll look at it when I do, and then we'll look at the superintendent update.
Okay, yep.
Alright, we'll kick it off, talk about the fire hydrant blow test that was performed. We performed one, June 26th. This was done for 288 East Main Street, which is actually, a building in front of Red Mill Village. The fire hydrant that needed to be flowed and the other hydrant that needed to be gave were actually inside Red Mill, because the feed for this location comes off of the Red Mill water. There's a 4-inch sprinkler, 2-inch domestic going through the building, and they're verifying, the current fire suppression system that's there, for potential upgrades to that building. So the test, was performed.
Well, is that where the pizza place is? And Kelly's? Okay, they're gonna expand?
There's, a different.
Pizza place, Fat
Back
Cousins.
Yeah, I knew that was,
So,
yeah.
For some reason, but maybe it was just insurance regulation purposes, to make sure it was accurate.
Yep.
With the information that they had before, but, we were able to get that done. We did respond to a couple calls inside Red Mill after that, which we kind of anticipated was gonna happen. A few of the other residents that were there, that, were walking around while the hydrant was being, flushed, did mention that they did notice a little bit of color, but it quickly went away after being enforced it for a while. So, feedback is, minimal at best. And it seems to be,
No issues at 241 East Main or whatever that is, that big complex there.
a little
That
further down, we had no calls
Good,
from there.
good.
Much larger test we performed was a fire pump flow test. This was Auto Parts International. This was off of Mansfield Ave. And that was June 27th. Notifications about that test were posted online and in the Sun Chronicle. Unfortunately, as anticipated, with the flow from that pump, we did have some disturbances that were noticed. They were reaching as far as Freeman Street, but mainly isolated to the Mansfield Ave area. That test there at full flow is 3,000 gallons a minute. So it's just slightly higher than what we typically run our system at by 3 times. So, cruising out, we addressed the issue during the day. People who come home later in the day, they still had some discoloration in their services that was noticed. So the technician actually responded later, did a little bit more low flow into the areas once we were able to pinpoint the calls, but again, seems to be pretty targeted for that location. Just based on the call that we get, if it was noticed somewhere else and we didn't receive a call, we unfortunately can't do anything about that. Those are some of the most impactful tests on this fire pump test. And pretty important that people every once in a while, it's not as fun as watching all the other videos online.
Yeah, but
Hop
if we had to
through
do,
and look for notifications.
if we had to do this when the plant wasn't online,
Oh,
we'd be chasing it now.
we'd still be there. We were jump over to well 4. I mentioned in our last meeting that well 4 actually failed. Just towards the end of June. We had a company that was scheduled to come out and clean that well, so we left it offline. Coordinated with them to have them come out and do both services, since they had to pull the pump and motor to do the cleaning anyway. Once it was out, we had them truck it off and take a look at it. The third rig came in, they was doing what they needed to do. The well actually came out really surprisingly good, which it varies every time we had it cleaned on how good it comes back. The surge rig and the pump were able to generate unlimited amounts of water, very good water. When we installed the new pump and motor, the motor was the existing motor. It couldn't achieve anything near the flow rate that the surge rig was.
Really?
We had the electrician come out, verify that it was wired correctly and not backwards. There was no difference at all. It ended up being that motor wouldn't spin any faster than what it was stuck at prior to the clean. So we also have to replace the motor. So the motor's on order. It could be in sometime this week. again, if there's any benefit to it, part of the bills were from the previous fiscal year. We were able to, get the cleaning that was set up to be done in FY 23. The pump portion was set up 23, now the motor is come out of 24.
We get from auction cost yet, or
We have
they still
not.
go from us?
We have not heard anything on that. Just the way it is, so that well is still offline,
Okay.
waiting on parts. It'd be great when it comes back online, but 5 and 6, we're pumping wirelessly.
What's the ballpark on a motor like that?
Really not that expensive because we switched over from the high pressure, high turbine head, vertical turbine heads to low pressure, and this one is actually in the ball. And if I was to pay for gas, we could be in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. They're not
The submersible?
crazy money,
Yeah.
but they vary. I don't remember if this is the specialty one that was for that purpose or not. We have issues with that fitness adapter in the past, and oddly enough, it was something like this time again, and it's getting stuck, going in and out. And it requires a little bit more time on site after having to jack it out. They just don't go in the sleeve as some of the other styles do. But all part of the fun. Of course, the water and sewer rate studies. We touched on this a few times before in the past. We are due or overdue for a reevaluation of the sewer availability connection fees. I know DEP and I have talked about this. It's going to require a couple of public hearings, discussions about where we should be, because right now we have the two separate fees for connections. We've got the betterment charge for the West Main Street people, and then we have the betterment account, which is the sewer connection based on previous projects. Two different amounts, or a decent amount of money. It makes sense to bring the connection availability fee up to the same as the betterment were on the last project. So I'm sure it's going to raise quite a few questions, and that's what the public meetings and stuff are about. On top of that, speaking with the previous office administrator, both she and I couldn't remember last time there was actually a sewer rate study that was done, looking at what we actually charge, separate from the connection fee.
Right.
We are due for a new water rate study, so coming up to the end of the 5-year increases that we just put in place. I believe that last one just went in place the previous quarter. Okay. So that is something that we do have, need to talk about, just make sure the board's on.
The water rates went up as of July 1st.
I believe it was the last increase, which was recommended from the previous rate study that was done.
And what was that? How much was that? Percentage wise?
I thought it was 10. I thought it was 10 across the board every
When was that rate study done?
2019.
I remember that.
Who did that study?
Abrams, Mark Abrams, and his son.
So you initiate a rate study, you raise your rates, and it takes 4 years before the rates have to go up.
No, it went up every year.
Oh,
for 5 years.
So you have options. You can increase your base charge or your minimum charge by a huge lump sum. You can adjust your rate structure as far as your 0 to 4, your 4 to 10, and have an incremental, which is recommended so that you obviously promote conservation of water, which is something that DEP looks heavily at. Kind of penalize the people that are up into the higher end, so your rate can change as you go up through the years. The biggest issue is this rate study was done prior to COVID. Everything's changed. The markets may not ever go back to the way that they were. Product costs may not ever go back to where they were. And I tell you right now, chemicals are still twice as much as they ever were. So we have to do a water rate study at the bare minimum. It may make sense to do them both at the same time, or there may be too much information required that we may need to stagger it. I didn't know until we talked to, I would assume, Abrams, because we've used them in the past.
They've been good. They've been good. I've been in place since I've been on board.
So do we initiate ask them for a proposal, or how do?
That's what, as long as the board is comfortable with doing that, I can, start the ball rolling with them, explain to them where we are. They obviously want to go back into that. That was part of the previous rate study. And feel them out if they think they can do water and sewer at the same time, or if they think it's going to be too much of a burden for our office to get all this information to them within the window that they need. It's not going to be a coordinated event to pass all that information along. But it's definitely something we need to look at, even if we don't do it right now. So it needs to start. process.
Yeah, I think we should get the ball rolling yesterday.
And, that, I believe is going to be separate, but it may actually have some combination with, determination of the sewer connection fee. That if you're looking at the betterment, it would be nice to see how it all works in conjunction with what the actual budget is. So, obviously, we've heard people complain about the sewer connection fee being too high. So maybe there's a way that we could knock that down to a slightly lesser amount and charge more per unit, and still balance the budget, basically. It would give a break to people who are existing in town and more or less put a burden on people who are coming in trying to build. The things to look at, I think that might be advantageous for everybody to look at what options are available.
So the sewer connection fee, Steve,
Steve and I have been talking about that. They came up with the formula for the betterments to West Main Street based on a formula used of a percentage of increase from the previous project, which was the Winnicott Doors. I don't remember how the breakdown worked, but basically we went from 11,550 to 16,000 based on years and the percentage increase each year. Well, from the last project, it is.
Betterments, one way to do betterments is 100% better. You just figure out the cost of the project divided by all the property. It's another thing like $50,000 a property, and that's not the way to go. So you kind of come up with a betterment that you feel is reasonable, and you got to find where you're going to get all the other, where you're going to get all the money to pay down the debt.
So-
Schools contribute.
betterment and the rates are done at the same time or incorporated
So-
with the,
So that's different, right? So what Frank's talking about is the connection fee that is in your rates.
Right.
And the connection fee is so the betterments are assessed on an individual project basis. As soon as the project's ready for use, anybody who's fronted by it is assessed their betterment, and then they never pay it back. And then these other properties that come along in areas that weren't assessed a betterment and they want to tie into the sewer, they pay a connection.
Based
To try
on
to come up with what, a connection fee would be, what's the total cost of all these sewers we've ever built over time, divided by all the users and the gallons that have gone through the system. It's just,
the formula is massive.
Doesn't.
It's huge.
there's no right number that tells you what's everyone over time
I've
should
done
have
such a
paid.
study and I know how complicated it is.
Yeah.
So, it's just, as you say, you're going to put the number, it's going to happen.
I just think if you did to get the public involved, look at options for possibly lowering the connection fees, which will obviously promote more businesses, more growth coming into town. But the public would have to understand that, we still have a certain amount of bills that we have to pay, so it's going to be made up somewhere else. So if, you want to do it that way, it could work. But again, having a little bit of public insight, knock down the connection number, but you're going to make it up somewhere else, whether it be in the cost per gallon. The end number has to work out that the budget will obviously cover.
So the Elm Street sewer project that you were designing, going in front of residential homes?
Good.
So, is that a betterment then?
Hasn't been determined yet. More than
It
likely,
will be
yes.
recommended now.
So the betterment charge would be a new one? A third one?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be 16.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
No, there will be,
Okay.
be analysis done on those data.
Again, based on the overall cost of the project.
So logically, makes
Stakeholders.
sense that we have one, betterment fee, period. Okay. So how,
One
so,
connection.
On that.
Connection.
So
connected, right?
We have to have both, because you're gonna end up, you need a connection fee, if it's a one-off property somewhere, on this thing, you're gonna have a number that that person has to pay to.
Yep.
And you wouldn't get benefit.
It wouldn't be
You couldn't do a betterment for a situation like that.
So,
Like you've attached it to the most recent. Is how it works.
It's typically, the number is very close or the same as your most recent project, being as that's the connection cost that's determined for available sewer in the town, because the town system works as a whole. It's a juggling act, it really is. You can have somebody on one street that pays this amount, and the very next street is gonna pay a different amount, based on how many projects and how it was done. And it's very difficult to come up with a number that works.
Because the connection fee and betterment and then the user charges cover operating maintenance.
It would make sense to me that we actually have the rate study involved with at least looking at that. Even if it never comes into the play together, it would be something that was investigated because it's going to show that it's potential income for the department as well. If you know there's a project that's ready to be completed, that's assumed revenue that comes in, anticipated revenue for the department. So that does have to be looked at whether it's part of the equation.
Timing wise,
This one.
all of it. And so with this proposal from Davis and the Davis, that goes back to, I would say, wait a minute, it's September 1st. I mean, do we have the money budgeted to do some?
It's going to depend on what the study entails. The last one wasn't all that much. I believe it was $7,000 to $7,500. That was just a water. So we have to keep separate accounts. If you don't go over 10,000, you don't have to go up. And that's if the quote's done, if we want to use this one professional firm that we use in the
For
time,
engineering services, so you don't.
the powers up there. The other building.
So I think we should
We'll call this
proceed,
week.
I think we should proceed to get proposals. Using a reasonable time to put together, not to get to that, to the panel and really make it to the, basic activity. And then we can take appropriate action, but I think there's other stuff needs to be done, we'll fit it into the same schedule, whatever that schedule is, so that, at the end of the study,
We come to that.
we have a conclusion with made decision. On the public hearing, who actually does those?
We told them here, if it's going to
The library too.
Yeah, there's a lot
If it's going to be a large turnout or anticipated large turnout, we can coordinate and get the hall up there.
Do you think with the new structure of the town that would have to be changed from it?
Honestly, I don't.
I mean, it's just something that, we're gonna have to hire, other
Another level. Yeah.
peers.
Yep.
I mean, and do you know if the town's contemplating a drainage fee?
I do not know.
You know about that?
No. Currently, the stormwater is handled by the highway department.
You know, the fee coming up on that?
You need to set up a stormwater utility first, and then it usually starts with the commission, then a stormwater utility.
There's other towns do, but I always bring it up because there's only so much stuff in the camp. We're,
Oh, yeah. No, I will
like
definitely,
people playing Massachusetts, but I imagine that it's the state that is involved.
yeah, I can pass some of those questions along.
We'll get the new DPW back in the outside.
I believe that's gonna save us money, so we're all set.
I'm not good at that math. I don't know if any work at my door.
New map. You can quote me on that if you want.
I'm going to continue real quick here. Mass DEP annual statistical report review came back as anticipated, and unfortunately we see it quite often every year. They denied some of our unaccounted for water percentages because they don't agree with the calculations that we use to come up with that information. So this previous year's report, we were over our 10%. We've done everything to look at the different numbers and figure out what has changed and what's going on. We really can't come up with anything that really stands out. Our system's very tight. We know when there's a couple service leaks going on in the middle of winter. We can track it by our daily usage. So something's off. We still haven't figured out exactly what it is, but we still submitted this, expecting to hear from them because we're over the 10%, even though historically in the past we haven't been that far off. And we're still not now. We submitted 13.4% for unaccounted for water. They came back, said that they've adjusted it to 14.3, which again, still isn't horrible. But, knowing that our numbers are as tight as they were, weren't so happy with that. We think some of it is due to unrecorded flows that happened during firefighting. We've had quite a few fires over the past few years, a lot of brush fires, a lot of mutual aid fires where the hope to come in and do something just over the town line, and if there's multiple trucks and tankers.
How do we track that when there was a fire? Do they contact us, or we just basically get them to it?
Most times when we ask them for information on fires, they are so far under on the estimates.
Yeah.
Because you have so many people doing different things, so many trucks, engines, all that. It's almost impossible to figure out what they actually use at a fire. We do our best guess by looking at our tank drop over time, how much our wells are running, so we know exactly what we typically would pump during that period of time, and we just subtract the extra usage. That's what we calculate and consider
Makes sense.
our conservatively estimated amount. But now they've come back and said that our unrecorded flows did not include the pressure. So that takes the calculation off of their charts because they can't calculate what the flow would be at a certain pressure. And this includes pipe failure. We can tell them what the pressure was in the system at the time. We can't tell them what the pressure was while there's a hole in the ground. So they can't do the full calculation on their computer, which basically takes it out as a possibility every year.
I'll work with you on that, and we can do a rebuttal if you want.
So we do have the option to resubmit and try and give them some additional information to see if it'll get us back to our 13.4, which again is still
So,
over the 10%, but
so when do they start putting sanctions on you or whatever their penalties are? Is it 10%?
it's going
So there's the two, it's the 65 residential gallons per capita day,
Yeah.
and then you have the 10% on the tax water. You guys are relatively close on the average, so if they take the 3 year and you've got up and down. But for the most part, you're not at 20 or 30 like something. So
we do very good with that tracking, even more so now that we've been out with the sprinkler company doing tests. We track the usage, we look at school drain, and do our best to determine estimate what it is.
So, what is the penalty if the money comes down?
So it's through your water management
Water bans.
permit, so they could, you're in violation technically of the standards, but I've rarely seen that unless you're very egregiously. I mean, if you're in a stress basin and also having other factors, there's other, they're bigger fish to fry right now. I mean, the hope is that, they're estimating 10% is kind of the background leakage, but unless you have a super tight system, that's probably what the average is, so that
0%
has been
is
argued
what I'm saying.
has been argued by a lot of water systems that in New England compared to the rest of the country, that's kind of something that, but then BPA come back and say, well, there's other people that have it 3%.
I would like to see their numbers and where they got it from.
That's
Maybe we're missing the calculation.
10 miles of water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the other thing that typically happens is they want to see if and when you've done a full townwide leak detection. So that maybe there's a leak that's going on out there and it's been going on for 20 years and it's never surfaced. That's always a possibility. It's been a long time since the town has hired somebody to do leak detection. We've done them in-house and we do them at random. If we have an area that we're concerned about or we see something that's an area that's wet and it's not typically wet, we have all the equipment to do it. They don't want to hear that we're doing our own. It was the last conversation that I've had with them, is they want to see that it's done by a professional company.
They want to spend some money on an outside.
The town was going, right. Because it's obviously, it's very easy that we could say we're doing it, and we're not doing it. Or maybe our equipment is faulty, and they're going and they're spending all that time and overtime out there, but we're not hearing anything. So they assume that a professional company has much better.
How long would a townwide leak?
She does half the town themselves each year. And
We're doing it now. Yeah.
there's so many areas. I used to actually do the leak detection when I first started here 20 years ago. There's so many areas in town that you can't do because of ground noise. Any residential neighborhood that has direct area electric with transformers on the corner, you can't pick up on a water leak because of a hum in the ground. Anywhere like Cisco that used to be in town with all the trucks running at nighttime, you'd be amazed at how many miles that goes underground making a noise that you just can't pick up the difference in the sound frequency.
So there's a satellite leak detection company out there that we had looked into. They came in and it was pretty fascinating what they do. And what they do is they look at moisture in the ground and they can differentiate between, standing water, running water, salt water, and everything. And they can give you the hot spots and then you can go there and do your boots on the ground kind of leak detection. And it might be something.
Satellite imagery?
Mm.
Wow.
pretty fascinating, and they do they can do a big area, and other towns can get on board. They had asked us if other towns were interested, there might be something we want to take a look at, and have the guy come in and do a demo, and just
That sounds really cool.
and for what they were offering, and if we could split the cost, I'm sure other towns would be on board with them snapping a couple photos and telling us where the hotspots are.
That'd be awesome.
See, that I don't know, it's just pretty new to me, I've never heard of it before.
So they do want you to use the digital correlators versus the brown lights.
Well, what they do is they're gonna tell you the hotspots where they think there is a leak, like I said, and then you go.
I had to do that for
it.
certain cross country because you're not 100% sure. Sometimes you can go 3 miles without a heat valve and something you need to water. So you got to put a correlator actually on a hydrant or a valve or something.
Right.
And if you've got a long stretch, you can't. find it.
They're saying that they could, get a leak up to 2 feet away or the satellite. So, it's pretty fascinating, listen to them if you want to be looking into and just have it on the plate at least.
Frank, you talked about, the fire hydrants and using that for fires, not a lot of fires, but I'll show my ignorance here, but are there any towns that meter hydrants? Is that a thing at all, or?
And not for fire stuff.
It's not for fire.
Not
You're
fire.
not allowed to set a meter on a dedicated fire line. I mean, years ago, I forgot when it was, they changed it. We actually had to go and remove meters on 6-inch and 8-inch lines that were feeding certain areas. One of them was actually 120 West Main. They had a vault with a huge water meter in it, an orange meter. But because it's hydrant tied off of that meter is a fail point and a clog point. So, the potential is there.
Get fire rated.
Okay.
And they're
Yeah.
much more.
Yeah, the fire rated meters don't have an obstruction on the inside, so
Right.
when they operate, there's no possibility of having a clog.
Okay.
But you don't want anything on a hydrant, having anything that would slow down a fire department to get cooking up on a hydrant. So
It was involved in remove, there is opportunities to go ultrasonic, but again, it's really amount of money. Yeah, you have to have on every single hydrant worth it. To be able to carry, it's not worth it.
And for you to set it up while an emergency's going on, it's just not feasible.
I mean, we're pretty confident with the calculations that we do based on tank drop and what we are flowing. I think we come within a few thousand gallons of what we actually see going out. Knowing what our daily average is, our SCADA system, is rock on wood forward. If you can pick up a leaky service, you've done it. Over time you can zoom in and really focus in on it and change it really level. So when it kicks on, it kicks off, and if you look back a week before, there's something that happened. It's pretty impressive. I give the guys a lot of credit for what they do on the plant.
So the town of Mansfield does this re-spectrum, is that what you said?
you have your own equipment or, sorry, just want to clarify the question.
Yeah, we've got correlators, we got, data loggers, and we have, this sensor.
We have the same.
Yeah.
The data loggers.
And they said that that's not, acceptable?
They wanted professional service. There was nothing on record when it was last time.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time. I mean, I've been here 23.
It's never a bad idea if every 5 years or so to just have somebody come in. It's $120 a mile usually.
And it's not crazy. You need to broke it up in big sections of the town. So you'd still show that you're being proactive, and we could say we're doing the rest.
We do half the town, and then Mansfield does half the town, and then we'll hire out our left for the, yeah. They do it on segways.
Why don't we investigate that?
I think we'll look at that. I asked Steve, I sent him an email asking who they use. I think
the heat evaluation.
No, they're not on anymore, are they?
I've
We used to use
years,
them,
but
I want to speak to somebody and explain the
Did I send you that
difficulties that I
list?
had previously.
I sent you the whole list.
You did.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
We can definitely do some of the areas that are quiet, no ground noise, stuff like that. Obviously guys can go and get some overtime work the other night. But, the areas that I know I historically had problems with would be the areas that I want to target. And they are some of the areas that have some pipe and stuff. So there could be some leak going on there. With the ground noise, technology that they can eliminate the background noise and focus in on others, which I'm sure they probably do now. That kind of be the area I definitely want to focus the professionals on.
Yeah, it's something something, if you're not used to it, and you haven't used it, it can be very difficult to pick up a lead. Really can be.
I'm sure my game is going to do it at 20 years old.
We used, DJ touch card. The reason they have a decision that does that. Yeah, not mistaken. But we had to wait for the subway shut down. To be written in the day. The subway stopped before we could actually do it because back on the school talking.
I got a couple more things here. We touched on the sewer generator. The other generator, Park Street, is actually in. It unfortunately last time is not operational. They went to do a startup and the gas regulator, I believe, was too small. Once they got up to max load, they were full volume and the pressure dropped. So there was some coordination going on between the contractor and Eversource to resolve that problem. We thought that was resolved early on when they were out there. The contractor met with Eversource prior to the generator even being on site.
Yep.
And they thought everything that was there was perfectly fine. So now it's kind of a little bit to take it back and forth.
It's close, just when they got the max load, they dropped.
Were they there?
Too much. So
Were they-
Kraft would, they wouldn't approve it. It didn't hold the pressure that it has to for them to say that it can.
So they wouldn't sign off on it, basically. The chances of that generator running at full demand ever for a duration of time are slim to none. You would have to have all three pumps running and starting the clog, create that much of a load. Yeah, if you got that going on, you have other issues that are much bigger than that generator.
They all, that's just a peace of mind to know that,
Right.
and then you know that you're fine under your norms.
Mhm.
So they are, the latest, coordination with that source, they're still adamant that the meeting is fine, but the coordination outside of that.
Still on that.
Regulator or whatever, yeah.
I think the meter itself is fine, the line is fine. I think the question was the regulator. It's possible it could have started to cross over. Based on the volume going through there that it's never seen and the temperature that we were dealing with. Could see that happen again and they may go back in a month and it's not happening because the weather's different. Just a unique situation, but why wouldn't it be a problem? So, another unique situation. Fiber optic cable repair. We knew about this at the last meeting.
It was on the street.
That line that was hit and severed was repaired. The only way that was done as quickly as it was is because the director of technology for the town reached out to the company who originally installed the line, had them come in, assess the situation, provide an estimate, and do the repair, all within 2 days, 2.5 days, I think it was. The impact was to her budget, whereas we were being asked to have the impact to our budget, or it's still looked at by the insurance company. So there's a letter before you tonight asking that each of you approve and sign the transfer of the funds in the tune of $13,128.80 from our account to the Director of Technology. Here. So we have calls to the town insurance to see if it is covered. It is a unique situation because there was no witness, there was no accident report, although we heard third party what happened, there's no way to prove it. So they were going to look into the town's insurance to see if there was anything that covers that type of accident.
So this would have done last year's,
This will go from last year's budget as well, based on the timing of the event. So this amount was encumbered, and they're asking for that basically to reverse the technology director because this pulls everybody out of the water. It's obviously wasn't expected, especially at the end of the year,
Right.
let alone at any time. Where we have remaining funds in our FY23 that would obviously cover this. That's what we ask is that we transfer them over and wait to see if we get back from the insurance company.
So whoever did this, we'll never find out. That was in it, right?
More than likely this will go And so
Why did it get paid out of data processing from the beginning?
she's the director of technology, so she had to approve these bills as they came in.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, we couldn't even talk to them while this was going on, other than our personal cell phones, which we actually had to leave the property for because there's no cell service here when the lines are down. So she handled everything as quickly as possibly could be done.
Yeah,
It's just the way it works.
We kinda did a solid, I think.
Oh, most
At the end of the day, we gotta pay it.
I think it's in our best interest to do that and hope that
Well, we might still get an insurance on that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's some chances of winning a lottery.
or actual cost money coming in.
I don't know about that. We put them.
Okay, so if you just, I make a motion to debit the water department account 061-450-570-5313 and credit account 001-155-570-5315 in the amount of $13,128.80. All right. A second.
All in favor?
So there were some questions. I do have a few answers to the questions that had come about. I mean, some were from the board, some were from the general public. Many people wanted to know if they were unaware that there was any fiber in town. So it's limited, and it goes from the police station down East Main Street, West Main Street, South Worcester, to our offices here.
But that's dedicated, right?
It's dedicated.
Okay.
Yep, all the town buildings are connected to it, but this is dedicated line. Questions came up. Is it town owned and is it currently maintained? It is town owned. It is not professionally maintained.
What does that entail, what to maintain?
It's never been looked at since it's been put up.
Yeah.
I don't know what, it's up.
It's a fiber line. Typically, you would have some type of an inspection done on it, mounting points, if it's not charging, if there's a tree coming into it, causing, the coating to be worn off. If there's a hole that was struck in the area and it has to be transferred over, if it's been
So was this
properly.
beneficial to the town, not just us? I mean, that we,
This is gonna promote some action. The town is looking into getting a maintenance contract with the company, who did the repairs with the contract that we were out of Boston. And they actually did inspect the line after it was struck because it had to actually do multiple hanger replacements because the line pulled before it actually severed. So they came all the way down John Scott and replaced many of the retention holders that hold that line in place. So something good will come out of this at some point once the contract is made either with them or maybe a private food service or something. Because I don't believe, and I could be wrong, I know in the past the town operators were not line certified, so they couldn't work within a certain proximity to the high tension line. And this line is very close to those. You need to have a special license, special truck equipment.
Karen, do you have anyone that does that, or any idea?
The fiber out.
Yeah.
We usually have it, sometimes kind of expensive.
Fibercom, do they do that? I think, we've used them in the past, okay? That's that in.
All contracts,
I think I have a number, I might be able to.
So that's the only fiber up.
in town, correct. Right now. So hopefully, something good comes out of this and, that money that wasn't put to waste. There's still no determination of what caused the line to droop in the first place. It was a failure of a component, if it was a car that struck a pole and the pole was replaced, but it wasn't transferred over, which is my assumption, but
Phoenix fiber. That's what it is.
but all of that should be ability to address.
What's that?
Yeah,
Well,
if you
after
have
the
that
bill's
number.
only $13,000.
For what they had to do, yeah.
Gave them like 30 for fiber.
So,
You're seeing that.
it's incredible. Definitely something, we're probably very lucky that we have this much limited technology and limited ability to connect to it, because it requires much less to transfer the data back and forth. So, if you have contacts, I can definitely pass it off to the director.
Well, I'm not gonna pass it.
Just, in case they want to get a second quote or a third quote, depending on what the cost and for maintenance.
Absolutely.
Definitely good input. So that is all I have. We have Mr. Outside here. We had already talked about 313 West Main. that obviously is coming up in the meeting. You guys want to have a conversation of that, explain what your determination was, that's fine. All the way back to the first one that we looked at.
Yeah.
Is there anything else I'm missing? What am I looking?
A couple of sewer issues. We had a transducer failure at Great Woods. That was replaced on the weekend, and then
Did we replace that or did we have to?
no, we replaced it.
Oh.
It's kind of a plug and play, which is nice, but we're having a problem getting new ones. They have been discontinued, and the new ones aren't plug and play. You have to like rewire a whole line.
Oh. So we do the upgrade, you get it, so it's a process.
Well, talking with the sewer department, they could be looking at some ultrasonic transducers that are supposedly very accurate. We're not sure yet. We're going to do a little more research, but so they replace that one, and then the one they put in there to replace it, we think that may be malfunctioning because we had another issue at the same station where all three pumps ran dry because the pump down too far. So we think it's a transducer issue. The same. The wet well that one. It's like the transducer is about a foot to 14 inches under the water. It's saying it's 3 feet under the water. So they're going to troubleshoot that and see where we go from there, and see if we can get a replacement, and if not, if there's a better alternative that will, what's the word, is compatible with our Bulldog, our system right now. So that's pretty much it.
So, the transducer, the AirPods, we don't have them.
We had two on the shelf. They put one in. It's malfunctioning. They might put the other one in, and then we'll have none. And they're expensive. They were expensive, and we're not even sure if they still make them. So, and I know the newer generations they've come out with, you have to basically snake a whole line again. You can't just, not right now, you can take the transducer off the end, put a new transducer on, and leave the line where it is.
So those are in low flow.
We have floats. This is, gives you an accurate reading of what the wet well depth is.
We have those as our primary function.
Yeah, floats we have in
Floats.
emergency backups. But we'll see. We'll see what the research says about those other ones and see where we can go from there. But I mean, as of right now, we're okay. We know about that differential, and I'm sure this week they might try to. If they can't troubleshoot it, they'll replace that new one with the one we have on the shelf.
So, Ms. Outside, welcome, thanks for coming down. We had, discussed this previously, and I'm assuming you received the letter. Okay. And, I know that we were gonna check on, the interest, if we've ever waived interest before. Is that correct?
Yep.
And that, we've never done that before, have we? No, have we? No. I don't recall, since I've been on the board, us doing that either.
I don't know the way, it's a good thing to start either, but a very small portion of it all too.
No, I know. But I mean, in lieu of everything that, in the situation that happened, I know we talked about this, but if there was sewer involved, we're able to help with the sewer end of it, but that's not the issue. And I know that we talked to the tax collector in regards to all this, being in the best interest So, you know. For the payment plans in regards to the payment plans, let me, it is not in the best interest, right?
Yeah, because it's already
To
been,
all
they're
payment
already
plans,
gonna have a
right?
payment plan once it goes.
To the lien, and so it's redundancy.
Yeah, exactly. I did decide not to do that. So we voted to not, vote on the payment plans for that reason, because once it goes into a lien, you can at that point enter into a payment plan with the tax collector. And from now until then, you can still make payments against that balance.
I paid $1,000, and the next bill come out to be $1,000 more. After I paid $1,000 from the bill, it comes to be $6,300. So that's the
Well, this running hose had overlapped from one quarter to the next, right?
I understand that, yes.
So it would be reflected in two different bills.
Right after that, when we usually said, I paid $1,000 state part of $500. That was only instead of the second part of the bill was overlapped. We got the penalty for, we got the interest, how this from, I don't understand that. And why I cannot agree. So, if you think the best interest of part of the entire town for one, habitant would have been still, which is not important, just an accident. And there is no way they can forfeit as it's a part of the bill. Now, in that level, it's like these people that they cannot even accept the payment plan, they cannot reduce the taxes they already pay the bill, everything must be paid.
It states that we're not gonna formally enter into any payment plan. But
That's what I have.
it doesn't mean that you can't make, monthly payments to the department.
Yes, I understand that, but at the same time, I'm still accumulating interest. And interest on $6,000, that's what after I think $1,000 to be called out to be higher.
Or the interest, that amount couldn't have been the interest.
I understand that the interest, how much you get it? How do you calculate the interest?
Interest is $100. That's what I'm looking at right now.
On a bill that is $6,000.
That seems to be higher than I think.
I mean, other than the bill, the capital is the highest, but it's based on a percentage of the water.
Okay.
So you have the actual water bill, that's
43.
43, right? So the capital is a percentage of the consumption, which turns out to be 43. Interest is obviously not impactful at all compared to the other there. And then the current water bill that's due, obviously is rather high as well.
Why?
So the current water bill is not so high since I detected the problem of the water. And somebody came over and they did the representation for me, and he said I don't use much water.
It looks like it went on for a couple of quarters somewhat, because you've got a jump here to about 80, and then 500, 150, and then back to 80. When the previous average going back is less than that. So
It definitely did change in, I think, starting in September of 22. The increments were starting to increase. Then there was the massive leak where the hose was running, which was for 1 quarter into the next. And now the most current reading, consumption's at 85, which is fairly high.
Is the 4358 for 1 quarter? Or is
No,
that-
that's for all.
That's the equivalent balance for half the whole thing, okay. So the $1,000 in the next bill had to be this one consumption of 152 from 3.1 to 6.1, right? And the bulk of it is the previous quarter.
Well, the consumption from 3.1 to 6.1 is 85 units, not 152.
Okay, I'm
That would be
looking at
from
it.
December to
Okay,
March.
okay.
So it tells me that some point after March 1st, the leak, well, not a leak, it was a hose or something, remember?
Yeah.
A hose was discovered and shut off
Mhm.
at an early part of that.
That's what we think.
Um,
One in most section, the one at Egypt, and each of the least section is on a control level. So we're running to the current.
Now, after the was connected, nothing after that, so you hold for that. Now, there's the person who reflects what is used to be before that whole system.
It is not, it'll go from the previous year.
Now, what I'm saying, before this, I used to consume, let's say, 85 dollars or whatever it's called. After we started, the same again, you or you
we'd have to go out and get a reading based on what our reading was in June. So we read the meters in June. You used 85 units, which I'm trying to see. Yeah, so I mean,
It's high.
yeah, I mean, so we would have to go get a reading with our reading system and determine how much you've used from June 1st through now. If the hose is shut off, there's no reason to expect your bill wouldn't be the same, but we'd have to go out there and confirm. It wouldn't revert back to what it was before the hose was on. Your consumption should stay in line. It seems like you do use a little bit more,
It's also been
Seasonally,
sporadic if you go back.
but right, but he's only had one over 50 for the most part before last June.
what is the average consumption for?
That was in March too.
Uh,
That would be,
the average consumption for how long?
For the
It changes seasonally. It seems like,
in the 40s.
yeah, I mean, in the 30s, somewhere, in the 30 units area. Yeah, that's a lot, but, I mean, it's a multi-family home, right? Yeah, that's normal, as far as I'm concerned. It's not unusual to see a single-family home used in the teens. So, 79 units, which is what started last September, that's when you're starting to get high. And then you went to 485, 150, 285. So, I mean, we could see what you're using now. We could get a, during business hours, obviously, we could get a reading and see what you've used since June. But I would expect it to be in the 30 to 40 range.
and design to be sure that you're using reflects something that shows that your horse was beyond you.
Right.
Instead of something that is
Which to me, even the last reading does reflect that to me. You went from 152 units to half of that, because you must have you or whomever found the hose and shut it off. So, that's a drastic decrease by itself, let alone the almost 500 units you use from, December to March. So,
Look at the previous June, what the number was. 6622.
22, 19?
Compare that to this June, typically we see months that track very similar.
Right, but if the hose was running for a month, you're gonna have a high bill still.
You think that's gonna
You're gonna have to see what it looks like from June 1st till now, which, is if you're looking, September's readings are 47, 25, they're all in the 25 to 45 range. So that's where I would expect it to be at summertime. So,
I mean, you can set this up like you did for Plain Street and do a weekly reading on it and gather some information before the next meeting and see where it's at. I mean,
But that was a situation where there was a problem with the meter.
right.
There's no issues.
There's
with-
no issue.
with the reading a meter or.
no, it would
Just
be
confirming
Yeah.
confirming.
confirming
the
that
numbers.
There's no ongoing issue.
on top of what is considered average usage for that dwelling. If it seems to be excessive.
So the hose that was running though, that was shut off prior to March.
April and, I believe that was right around that. It's a letter.
Yeah, on the notes, but real quick,
Okay.
this page.
So, okay, so then the 85 is part of that.
On the 11th is when we went out and we did the leak detection, and there was no leak found at that time. So the leak was shut off prior to that, the hose was shut off prior to that.
Before this date, 11.
Right, but if it was shut off between March 1st and April 11th, then part of that would be reflected in that, in the last bill. Luis, do you know when the hose was turned off?
When I started note at my job, and found out that it was supposed to be in the clause, and I said it's out.
Yeah, I don't know if that has to do
All I'm figuring is 495 and 152.
yeah,
If the hose was running for the entire, from September to December to make the 495, and then the next quarter, 152, it had to have been shut off. During that cycle,
Partially into that cycle.
right?
Yeah,
Which means the 85 has nothing to do with the hose.
That's what I'm,
So there's two different issues here.
that's what I want to confirm. Yeah.
Okay.
It appears to me that the 85 is high. It appears the 495 and the 152 would indicate running in one quarter
Overlapping.
and overlapping into the next,
Yes.
or partial of the half. And that's where I'm still disconnected with why that 85 is there currently as the last reading taken.
Wait, let me ask you this. I was just speaking with Tara here and kind of bouncing off what Frank's saying. It seems like between June and September of last year is when your hike in bills started. You haven't had any new tenants or anything between starting last summer, did you? By any chance? Okay. Starting last summer, you didn't have any, from the year before?
It's always this thing.
Okay. Okay.
And one thing I do, I decrease my use of water to the windows.
Mm-hmm.
The number for this last reading just seems like there might be a background on some kind of issue with it.
Right. It seems like there could be something going on top of the normal use. That's what I was kind of getting at. So we can pull a reading
Right. But at the same time, he said he shut the hose off when he got that
to notice.
notice, which obviously was in April because that's when we did the leak detection. So,
And there was no leak.
I mean, unless the valve throttled down, which, to be fair, I have a hose that does
That
that.
will happen. Yeah.
So, the rate of flow could have throttled itself down naturally. I have a hose that does it all the time. But exactly. But what that doesn't make any sense to me is if it froze, why isn't the leak detection picking up anything?
Thought out before you go to section.
April.
We had that weird February day that was like 80 degrees.
Yes.
Mm.
And then, because this is, you would expect if they didn't find the leak until sometime there, that we would have had 500 units
Again.
again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because the big one was from September to December, right?
December through,
December through March. It could have been frozen solid. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So does it look like I still have a pipe or something? or is
Well, you know what we'll do is we'll send someone up tomorrow to get a visual reading. Not a visual. We'll send someone up tomorrow to get a reading and see what your consumption has been. We don't have to interact with you. We can just go by the property and plug some numbers in. And we should have a better reading on what your consumption is looking like.
We haven't done a visual reading in this, right? These are all electronic.
There probably was I mean, we haven't needed a visual because it's an actual reading.
Right.
There might have been a visual reading when they did the leak detection, because we go to the meter and we look to see if it's spinning and see if water's moving through the heater when it shouldn't be. But I'm sure nothing was written down because it's giving us an actual reading. It hasn't been giving us a faulty reading. So
So if the 85 is high because of a leak and not because the hose running, then somehow that leak fixed itself by April 11th.
Well, so you have the March to June, and that's what the 85 is based on. So you have a potential there between the leak detection on April 11th
For a month.
and finding it. So if you have potentially, if he's around 20 conserving water, you could see something like that being high. And who knows when it thawed out too? It could have been.
But there
Ours
was
is
no
full.
leak. There was no leak found.
right,
Because
but
the leak was a hose. Let's just
Okay.
assume that there's no other leaks at this point based on the timing, and just assume that it was a hose leak.
Okay.
That was an open valve, and then it froze in the winter, and then it thawed out at some point, and then it froze again, and then it was found sometime in the first week of April, and then the leak guys came out and didn't find anything because the hose had been turned off. But that period of time between your March bill and your June bill, you had some warmer weather that could have thawed out and allowed that leak or the hose to start flowing again.
And then unfortunately, we also run into this with the toilets that aren't used on a regular basis. They hang up, the newer ones are quiet enough that you don't hear them running, that you have to run over them to go handle, like the old days, but it's still clicking that meter along. So we'll grab a reading from the house, see what the difference is from the previous reading that was taken on 6/1. And if it appears that it's trending to be high, we'll obviously get back in touch with you. Probably going to want to do another leak detection just to see if it is something that's intermittently hanging up or something, that can be pinpointed.
So is this an apartment house? Is that what it is?
There's a few people that live there. I wouldn't call it an apartment house. I mean, a few that
maybe my daughter will by herself, I will by myself. I have one table to use by itself, third, and then another one to come. So we put it all
This case, it's easier if we just snap a photo of the meter head late at night. No one's gonna use the water. There's no water usage in the morning. But, no, you're gonna have to do that. Yeah, that's what I mean.
I don't
So I'm getting at.
The automatic water filtration in the refrigerator, those are escapes.
that night time.
It's very small.
But there's no consideration, nothing that can be done to help me with that 6,000 dollars. Say I could do that.
That may be about the question.
And it seems to be, I know that I don't think it's really hard, we can 25 to 7 today. It's still going to be harder. So that's, it's simply higher than it is.
I don't know what I don't know what they are.
But the interest, to me, the interest isn't
Looking at
Doesn't
the
look that high
issue.
looking at these players.
So the interest is the 40% per year.
The iron is where that carbon level from coconut to be from the material. That's right on the step. Even if it was for a month, it wouldn't be that high.
Brooke, can we get a printout of his bills paid, the last year of bills paid?
Is that not allowed?
I can't find it in here if it's in here.
What's the account status report? I can show all of them.
No, there's a box in front of it. I have this.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, you can give you any, but this is very important for me. You know. It's because of me that I use very sick and I didn't know they have to pay for water and go putting my grass or the plant out. Oh, that's the music that love people and this is really amazing to relax.
But just to be very clear though, there's many accidents that this board does see, and everything that goes to the meter, they do charge everybody for whatever they do, unfortunately. But that is the policy that they're.
I had somebody do 5 Olympic pools of water for up to how much money was that? And he or she ended up paying only $4,000 because it's the house of 30,000 and they ready for and end up paying 4,000 like at the top there.
I don't think that's not.
I don't think that was here. Oh, okay.
No, yeah, that was the first 5 Olympic pools of water still. And they give them out to be very high and 24,000. So somehow arrangement was made because I think 4,000.
Well, we just had almost the exact same situation, and the board abated the sewer portion of the bill, but they were required to pay the entire water portion of the bill, which was in excess of $25,000.
I don't know how that works, you know.
Unfortunately, whether the water is used deliberately or an accident, we still have to pay to produce the water, treat the water, and pay to pump it.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, could you pass that down?
And not having everybody pay their fair share, whether it's purposely used or accidentally used, that fair share difference would have to be broken up against all the other ratepayers. So it's not fair to distribute, a burden on them. So even though it's an unfortunate incident, that's kind of the way that the board looks at it. So everybody has to pay their share that they've used or going through the meter for whatever purpose.
No. So it appears when you paid, payment.
My last people that we were down or
$1,000 reflect this bill.
Yeah, so you have, yeah, this is hard to follow. It's not in black, it's not in red and blue like the computer.
So it's the water, yes. So right here is the water, this is the total amount. And it looks like on May 16th, $146.25 went to that amount. And then 139.06 went to the interest. Correct.
But I said to
So these were already paid. So you're on your $500 fees right here. So the 146.25, 139.06, 461.83, 79.07. So those all added up to the.
this isn't what I look at on the computer, so I can't really make sense of it. It looks to me like there was so you made a payment and then there was a substantial bill that followed it. That's where the extra $1,000 came from. It's not from interest, it's from the fact that you used 85 units between March and June. So like I said, we'll go out tomorrow, we'll get a reading, see what your consumption's at, and establish whether another leak detection needs to be done, or whether you kind of returned back to your average usage. But as far as the interest is not what's killing you here. What's killing you here is you made payments, and then on June 1st, you got another bill for 85 units. I will be sure to send them out tomorrow to get a reading, and someone will contact you to let you know what the status of it was.
Yeah, that 85 units was roughly $800+, right? So it's not interest, it's actually still the water usage from March to June.
Yeah, you have the water, and then you have the capital based on the consumption, and then the minimal interest on top of that, so yeah.
The interest is still only, like I said,
It's capital.
it's like less than 2% for, I don't know, actually, it might be about different quarters, but the $100 seems reasonable compared, but it's really it's still the usage, it's still the water being there, going through here.
Yeah, because the lower the head, it's interest per annum, and then that's how it's like you have green bonds, and you see that amount to take over my bill.
And we'll follow up with you.
I thank you so much.
Thanks for coming down.
Thank you, Louise.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Terry. Thank you. Thank you.
I think it sounds like it's more of a thing, so if it's because of those dates. If you didn't find it until April, just based on the fact from September to December it was running full bore because it was not cold, and then December through March, you might have had some freeze thaw, and then certainly March through June you also could have had a little bit too, but we found it within the first month or so.
Yep.
But not good. That was
Well, Tara, we'll keep you going.
sure. I'm gonna be real quick. White Street change order, that's everybody. That was requested by Town Hall. Bounced and change order, compensate for the increase of $3,800 or whatever that was. Aqua Plus Fund, we did hear from the EPA last week.
Oh.
We did not hear from them, but they finally reviewed the information we sent a few months back. So, we have some follow-up to discuss because we're thinking some of the information they sent back was,
Will you sign it?
I think you did.
it's
If only?
It's info only. No, it's not. If you guys approved the pay estimate that included it all, they needed a balance and change order because some of our quantities were over and under.
Okay.
And for whatever needs to happen, the total contract value went up by $3,800 from the original $307,000. So this closes things out and makes it all nice in the books that we just did. So contract is signed, we're all set.
Tara.
Yeah.
Before you continue,
Yes.
Frank and I had a question. Is Mark Spinelli on both the auction costs and the ARPA money?
He is, as far as I know, he is only occupied.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because I saw something from him,
And that was
and there wasn't really any reference to what it was, and he was like, I think that's the ARPA money. I'm like, I thought he was just on the auction cost money. So,
hopefully he's not involved.
there's a lot.
Because
No,
the town and county.
we really like you, Mark Spinelli. That's what we really is.
No, because if he is, though, then I don't know, we haven't talked to him about it. He's your EPA rep for the actual federal, earmark funding that you had for the wells 4, 5, and 6.
Gotcha.
And we're working with them on just getting to the application process, which there was a pre-application process that we haven't gotten through yet. So we're getting there. They've reviewed it, and he's assigned another person to kind of take a look. So,
Okay.
but there's a few things in their list that they sent us last week and a couple of us were on vacation. So looking at it this week, though, I think that it's not warranted for this project. We started certain things early. Also, we'll get right back in the next week or so and start the process again. But our intent is to try to get the full application in. And there was a pre-environmental review. But you guys, it's pre-disturbed areas. It's nothing new. This is a replacement well project. There's no, I think there's a little bit of confusion with exactly what the project is on there. So
What do you do with the public comment period that didn't happen?
So that is not necessarily required if that's not a box that we need to check on that application, the application checklist, which again, if you are building a brand new area where you're clear cutting and putting a new treatment plant, then there would be another layer to that. But this is an existing facility, all three of the locations that we're talking about. Four. Technically, well, 3 is involved now. But we're talking about all your well. So, but we'll work with them and double check that it's just another check. He's working for the entire Northeast, the region one. So it's but and there's we started our project without before other places are waiting till their projects are actually fully through the application process, but because you guys could wait roughly 5 and 6 are already online. So but the money is there and we're going for it. So
Do they need to vote to approve this? I think it would be.
if you guys want to vote on it, sure. You did vote, so I'll go back through the original amounts. We did a pay estimate last meeting, authorizing approval of release of 100% retainage. There's 5% retained amount, but releasing all funds for the project to pay the contractor $57,000. The difference in contract price, and I don't have a copy of that, so we do have copies, but so this is a balancing change order on the last page. We basically go through, we take all of the quantities, any overruns or underruns, basically balance it all out. The total balance difference between the original, well, I should say after change order number 1, the total cost of the project difference between that and the final amount is $3,368.56. So authorizing Frank to sign this balancing change order in the amount of $3,368.56. It increases. Oh, I think he's holding that check at town hall for $56,000. So this is why the contractor's going to start to get on. Yeah, so it's a balancing change order just to increase the contract price, the amount of $3,368.56.
Okay.
And that's a little bigger number here. That's the. This is the change order, and then
All right, I move to approve the balancing change order for the White Street area water main improvement contract number 1 to increase the amount of $3,368.44 and approve Superintendent Frank to sign.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sarah.
Let me just.
So we're done. So we're done with him in that project, so that's good.
Yeah,
We're good?
hopefully the check gets cut for
Okay.
fiscal year end, everybody's happy.
You did a good job.
Yeah, I think,
It was a good company.
Has the grass been cut yet? I think it's green. No, that's
Green's
plenty-
good.
Plenty of rain.
They sell that house in the island yet? Get out of here. Are you serious? It's because the water's so good. You know.
yeah, it's why I adjust the numbers.
That's insane.
Right, open house. Crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful house. Isn't that sure?
I don't need any copies, I really could care less. But, and Tom doesn't. They just need, you just
Just
open
wants
it,
his
just cuts the check.
Right.
Okay, and then the other update, we have the standard annual contracts for fiscal year 2024, one of them for drinking water and one of them for the wastewater services. So that gets us into the next fiscal year. We are sending invoices to close on fiscal year 2023.
Okay.
But we also sent email programs with,
So how much are these for?
50,000 each.
These are the ones that we're talking, okay.
Yeah, these ones we talked about.
Didn't we bump it up to $5,000 or something? What was the one we bumped up $5,000?
FY20,
Last year, we
That was
signed
the
an
change
amendment
order,
to increase it.
yeah,
Okay.
so we added in the evaluation of the treatment plan,
Okay.
which was basically 20-some thousand.
Did we use all of that last year?
So on the sewer, no, that was the actual, we've used all of it the last 2 or 3 years, or pretty much all of it, right down to the wire. There's been a couple of years we've been under. This year we were more under, we had other contracts, other individual contracts, pump station up there.
Okay.
And we do one meeting a month.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, we increased the water to basically
The water was gonna come under. And
by 25,000 or
And
something.
then you identified the pass.
They did, yes. So, yeah, and both are in the amount of 50. The title is something.
Yep. Okay.
Did you send these to us?
Sent them to
You for it, I can do this.
I don't remember if we did. We talked about it. We said they're gonna be here later on. That's boilerplate. So I was close to. I don't think I actually ever
I
did.
imagine you reviewed it.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the general engineering and consulting services, related to municipal drinking water issues and assignments for fiscal year 2024 agreement between Town of Norton and Weston and Sampson engineers in the amount of $50,000.
All in favor?
I make a motion to approve the general engineering and consulting services related to wastewater issues and assignments for fiscal year 2024. Agreement between Town of Norton and Weston and Sampson engineers in the amount of $50,000. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's it on mine.
All right, Steve, you got 3 minutes.
I can do it in 3 minutes. You guys keep your pens off, you ready? Put some stuff in front of you. So, Cobb Street, phase 1, Frank reported earlier, we talked about they were ready to do the startup and testing. We were close. They couldn't get it up to the full pressure that they needed to test it. So they're working on that. They have submitted a pay rec for the work that they've done. Frank, we had sent this to you a couple weeks ago. I got copies of it today. So this is pay rec number 2 for that work. This pay rec is in the amount of $114,628. And that still leaves about $25,000 in their contract until they get this issue with Eversource resolved and the generator online and started up and tested. So this is just for Frank's signature, but again, I don't know if you guys want to act on that, make a motion on that.
Do that.
So this is covering some of those here. This is the Cobb Street, the pump station improvement project, paying the requisition number 2.
I make a motion to approve payments estimate number 2 for the Cobb Street Pump Station Improvement Project in the amount of $114,627.95 and approve Superintendent Frank to sign for it. Okay.
All in favor?
You sign this one, good?
So that's just for Frank.
Oh, right.
So we'll adapt.
Thank you, Steve.
So the only other thing on the Cobb Street station, we had talked last meeting about the change order that they had requested, $6,300.
For the lighting and stuff that you're
Yeah,
talking
for
about.
the stuff,
Oh,
we
yeah.
found the
Incidental,
fund wasn't in code. Whole debate about should they have
How
gone
did-
in
how
and
did
done
that-
that.
How did that,
So we cut it in half,
good,
Okay.
and I have a change order in front of you for $33,195.04. We went back and forth with them and went over some of the things that they were good at, you know. But anyway, we're recommending executing that change order. They've started to do the work.
We're getting what we need then.
In January.
Okay. That's
Um,
the bottom line.
So that's, and again, this is set up for Frank's signature. That's the amount of change order right there.
Does it work?
They haven't, yeah, they put the language
Change
in.
order for 319504? Okay. I make a motion to approve change order number 1 for the Cobb Street Pump Station improvements, the amount of $3,195.04, and allow Superintendent Frank to sign for it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, busy.
So that's everything on Cobb Street 1. We talked about, Norwood and Holly, the other sort. Bill, Frank jumped on that and took care of it. Again, we're just getting the queue, so as soon as they can get that check cut.
Okay.
We'll see what the queue means, but at least it's out of our court and back in this. So Cobb Street Phase 2, the improvement in the wet well, we have advertised, so we went over the Frank inspect with Frank and John Howard, and, we've since put the job out on the street, so it's appearing in the central register tomorrow. Brooke has got it going into the Sun Chronicle on Friday, I believe. And you guys gotta take your.
We'll get it up on combines by the end of the week.
And the only other thing you spoke, Ken, we put it up at Lake Town Hall.
Okay.
Posted it on the bulletin board up there, a hard copy of it. So the pre-bid conference, so it's gonna be 4 weeks, a 4-week process. We have a pre-bid on July 27th, Thursday, July 27th at the station. And then the bid opening will be Thursday, August 10th. For that. And again, it's mostly sealing, cleaning out, cleaning, resealing, both the inside of the wet well. Improvements to the environment. What contract, what? 220, I think it was $225,000. I will say we probably could reach out, and I'll talk to you some more time, but it's not a mainstream contract. I do have some concerns about how many bidders we'll get. So we might want to reach out to some people that do this type of work and make sure they know what's out there. So yeah, because it's not mechanical, it's not. But there are people that will want to do it, but we gotta make sure it's do our best. And then the only other thing, so we're progressing on Elm Street. We gotta start making some more progress on that, in the next couple of months. We have, so the owner of 64 Elm Street, apartment complex out there, has reached out to the sewer department, and now I'm talking to both of the owners there. They are replacing their septic. And I'm trying to get more information on that as far as, so they've got the design pretty much done.
Is that the multi?
So last week, the health agent was on vacation. I haven't been able to connect with him this week. I need to find out more if it's being mandated, if it can wait, if there's something they can do. The problem is I can't answer anybody. I can't say there'll be sewer in front of your property on X date and you can then tie in. There may be no way around them having to do some kind of repair right now. I mean, hopefully work has to, but I don't have all the details.
It's a major.
So, the past some years in Holbrook a number of years ago where they built up one unit. And we actually upgraded the facility, but designed the connection so that when the sewer came by, all they had to do was plug, one outlet and open the other. We worked out the grades, we worked out. Single.
Yeah, I think the more of the issue here is they're gonna have to pay to have a septic constructed and then pay for a connection fee.
So that's what we did. That's the picture we got. They had no choice because, working in the rent.
Timing is what it is.
He's been on that.
We couldn't tell them when the school was going to come
We
by.
don't have a town meeting authorization to do it. doing the design.
And then
We gotta get a town meeting.
Just have the designer accommodate them for him to hook up, that's what they can do. And they decide to do it.
And he's been needing to reflect that, replace that septic for at least 3 years.
Fairly new.
I think he's a
So they sold it. The way he explained it, and it was a little, there was a little bit of language there. Just having a phone conversation, but the gist of it is that the seller put money in escrow, I think, for him. So he's basically paying, the seller paid to upgrade the system, like put money aside for it. So he's using that money, drawing that down. That money to be used toward their connection fee if they knew that they were gonna be able to connect.
Yeah, too bad you couldn't tell me they're doing 6 months.
Right.
They have over maybe
Yeah.
4 years.
Right,
That's the trouble.
Anyway, so that's
Well, I
the
know.
update on that.
They don't have to hold up the price for 4 years.
All right, next meeting,
I don't know how to think,
the 8th?
that's what I have.
Oh, gentlemen, 2 things before you move on to that. One, we submitted our last 3 lead and copper samples at the beginning of June. We still have not received them from the lab. And our paperwork was due the 10th of July, which was yesterday. So,
Dr. Nick, who's usually.
we did talk to Nick. Last time he was very receptive about it. This time he said he would make a mental note. Basically, he said you got your samples in on time. It's the lab's fault. Kind of hoping that's where you
He's
again.
fantastic to deal with.
And secondly, I know I had sent that email earlier about the appearance before the planning board.
yeah.
Now, Mr. Bernstein had told me he has a meeting at that night. Jim, you said you could possibly go. There may be some merit, I was talking to Frank, about not having the whole board go as far as it needing to be a joint meeting.
Right.
We've had one commissioner who educates themselves between now and then exactly what we want. You can have him just appear before them on the agenda.
And that
Without
doesn't need to
meeting
be
for
a
us,
joint meeting at all.
we wouldn't have to post an agenda. Yeah, it wouldn't have to be a joint meeting. That's just something to think about.
That's only if one guy was gonna go.
Yes.
He was gonna go, okay.
Yes. So that's just something to think about.
So if
I'm sure
if 2 of us went, we'd have to post
it
it.
would have to be a joint meeting. Yep. Yep. So
When is that meeting?
the 25th.
Try to do that, 10 votes at the same time. And it's not
I've got 4 meetings on the 8th.
Having a brain fart, what are we specifically talking with the planning board about this week?
I believe you wanted to discuss Reservoir Street project was shot down because
Oh, okay.
they didn't want a butter's residents to have to connect within a certain amount of time. Is that it?
Right.
Because it's a privately funded sewer line.
That's it? That's the only thing?
They wanted clarification on the article that was how the connections are worded, whether it's based on the 7 years, if it's funded a certain way, or if it's privately funded, then it would be when the system fails. And they wanted clarification on that. We spoke with legal counsel about it. Legal counsel didn't like the way that the article was broken down because it left a lot open for interpretation. Whereas I know we touched on this before. The concern was if the project started off being funded one way and later changed, does it trigger the change based on the wording in the article? And myself, I can see it that way. The legal counsel could see it that way, but his final determination was based on the way it's written, he would hold it to the initial funding source. He said there should be some discussion with the board and possibly more discussion with other legal members to see if the wording can be clarified in those articles, because it's only going to become a problem more and more in the future. So we used the Combine project, for example, up on Leonard Street. They built an entirely huge private sewer system, pump station, everything that was designed to meet our specs for the notion that in the future the town, if they needed to connect to it and use it, would obtain that. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to give it to us. More than likely, we're going to have to purchase it. So at that point, it becomes municipal funding. If, in my mind, if you exceed 50% of the value, it's fully funded by the municipality. So at that point, it would trigger the requirement to connect. And legal counsel saw it that way, but also saw it the other way, just based on the way it's so big. Right?
The vaguity is the initial funding.
The way they recommend
Just
going
being
with
bought
it
it
now.
after the fact, that doesn't count.
Mhm.
So the
Right.
difference is, if it's municipal, it's connected to everything.
Right.
And if private, it's only in the fifty.
Correct. And then there was discussion about wording that I recall was supposed to have been in there for whatever reason it's not, which only made sense that if it was privately funded, you would connect when your system fails or when the property is to be sold. Because at that point, you still have to do a title five and all that. And we had reference going back to this for another section of town, which is East Drive, where we had copies of agreements that were in place from the seller to the new owner, where they split the cost of what the connection fee was going to be. So at some point that had all started, back in Dwayne was here. So we're going back quite a few superintendents, whether it was done because he saw it somewhere in writing or because that's what he felt like doing that day. I can't explain what he did. But it makes perfect sense that you'd want some type of stipulation in there that it wouldn't just transfer multiple ownership.
Sounds like a simple language change of, instead of privately funded, privately owned, municipal funded, municipal owned. Change that one word from funded to owned, and it clears everything up.
I'm sure it could. I don't know what involved.
And then if something changes downstream, you can't reinvent the wheel. Because that just causes.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah. And that's kind of where the planning board was. We were very surprised to hear that they would shot down the gentleman that come before here with his plans. I know he's been there before them multiple times, and they changed the design, they changed the layout and the quantity of the home. But then afterwards, we found out that the main reason that he believed they shot the project down was because it could impact residents along the way in the future, regardless of what the time frame was. So it's possible that an agreement could be made just for the specific project between the two boards that some type of money is put aside for the houses that are currently funded to cover the construction fee to connect that property when it becomes necessary, whether it be 7 years or 10 years, which I'm told is very common that other communities have worked with developers to do that. It's just an added expense to the developer, which gets passed along on top of the houses that they sell. If they really want to go there and they really want to build those houses, if you attach $2,000 or $3,000 to the sale of all those homes, it'll cover those minor, costs to connect. And then there's really no impact to the resident who's now fronted by the city. So again, a unique circumstance, something that hopefully all the boards can work together on, but.
And you say that, do you know?
Why not?
And all the boards would feel.
I think that'd be the best option.
No, I understand. Has that happened?
It's not common. We're working on that.
Alright. So if I have a conflict, guys, I don't know if you could want to
Available.
whatever.
I can check my schedule, but I don't think I've got anything going on.
So if you go, you just have to post it.
Do we want to also have legal there as well, to explain their end of interpreting?
For the amount of money that we pay them, I would have to say no. That's just my personal opinion. We have an email from them with a determination. They kind of, even though they had personal feelings about how it should be and what needs to be done in the future, I think they were pretty cut and dry about what their interpretation of the article was.
Now, interpreting an article is one thing, changing the wording, it would have to go back on.
Most definitely, it would be a lot more involved with that.
This is not the first town that's ever had this problem, by the way. All three of them could be like out there, or any time there's
It just makes sense though, if you're gonna have residents who are concerned that they're gonna be impacted by this at some point in time. The board's gonna favor those residents instead of the new builder coming in. But all boards should look at it as a benefit to the town because you're increasing the growth, you're increasing the utilities. So why not work out some type of an agreement? Even cut down the connection fee by half and have the contractor pay that as part of, their building. I mean, it's gotta be some work back and forth, we still need the customers. The other boards shouldn't be taking customers away from our utilities. because we shouldn't be doing anything that, discourages them.
Anything else?
August eighth.
On August 8th?
Day the 8th?
Good. 10:08.
I have a quick question.
Uh-oh.
I thought of this when we first started today. So we're not getting filmed today, but that's gonna come back, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. The hybrid meeting to where we have to do the Zoom, is that still a requirement? And if it isn't, can we just stop doing that and just meet in person and that's it?
I don't believe it's a requirement. I can double check, but I know the eligibility to meet just remotely was extended, but I don't know if it's a requirement to have a virtual access. Yeah,
Because,
I'm still going to meetings, but only Zoom.
really?
but I think that's a board decision. Like I know conservation meets virtual, so
I would be in favor in doing away with that and just having in-person meetings and that's that. That's my opinion. I don't know if you guys agree on the same opinion, but
Most of all, it's a 50-50.
I can check on the actual requirements.
okay.
The only added benefit to that would be is if for some reason we had a few members that were sick and we couldn't have a forum, or having them.
Well, then you can choose to post it as a virtual meeting. Like I believe it says on the agenda, I think, hybrid, in-person, and remote participation. So,
So in other words, if we
says,
knew that one of the members was going to need that prior, we could make that meeting hybrid, but otherwise.
correct.
I don't know about that.
Sick of meetings, maybe.
Oh, that's right.
All right, Jim.
All right, I make a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
All
I second.
in favor?
Aye.
Hey. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.